Okay, so hopefully I've got audio and you should be able to see me now.
I am seeing it. We're seeing you now
Mm.
and the presentation.
Ah, amazing. And we've got 2 minutes to spare, so that's good news as well. Um, Excellent. We've got 21 folk in the audience, which is amazing. Um, Guys, this is going to sound a bit weird, but if you can use, there should be a Q&A that's working. Rusty, I think you just tested it to make sure it was working. If you can use that rather than the chat, it just means we know what to track, is all. I'm going to try and, can somebody just post something in the Q&A again, just to double check it's working, if you'd be so kind. Sorry. It says there's 13 messages, but I can't see it. Where do I see that then? This is why you always have to start early. Maybe it's because I'm sharing my screen. So, okay, we'll presume that that's the case. What we'll do then, as the good thing with the Q&A rather than the chat is the Q&A is captured, guys. So if we do miss anything, it just means it's there, and then we can always go back and obviously pick up anything we've missed through the session. Annoyingly, it doesn't look like I can see it while I'm presenting my screen, which is a bit odd. So what we'll do, we'll go through the presentation, which is going to start in a minute, literally a minute. And then we'll stop the presentation at the end, and then we'll go into the chat and we'll do Q&A backwards and forwards and scroll back up. So just feel free to post anything as we're going through, and then know that we'll come back to it, which is probably better from a flow perspective anyway, in fairness, rather than cutting to the chat. We'll give everybody, it is meant to start at past, and I know it's literally just turned to past now. So we'll give everybody maybe another minute and then we will get going. This is automatically recorded, just so you know. I don't want anyone feeling, although I can't see any of you, so you're not exposed in any way. And obviously, your questions and stuff will be relevant anyway, but it's just to let you know, I think I have to do that if you're in America, that this is recorded, which means you can also, we'll chop it a little bit, but then we can also fling it out into the community for folks that couldn't attend today's session. I think we should get going, Joe. What do you reckon? All this small talk. We're a minute in. There's 24 folks in the audience. What do you think?
Yeah, let's start.
Okie dokie. You've got a squeaky chair, just so you know. It's very squeaky. Okay, I'm having a sip of tea. Let's get going then. So, thank you for all of you that have showed up. It's really appreciated. I know time is a very precious thing, so to spare some of it for us is lovely. Normally we have a Discord stages at this time on a Tuesday or a little bit later, half an hour later. But we wanted to do something a little bit different. I know previously we've been quite good with sort of I say that we have done extensive write-ups and then we've put them out. You guys have read through, particularly the OGs in the audience, and then we've taken feedback that way. This we wanted to do slightly differently in terms of format, because it's something that we've really wrestled with over the past couple of months to try and get into a format that we're comfortable and confident in. And I think it's important, particularly for new folks as well, to have some context around the decision we've made, how we got to make those decisions, what the implications of those decisions are, and then to get your feedback from there. So this is in a place where David is happy, the team are happy, technically it's possible. So we're ready, if you like, to sort of share it out wider. But I think just to have a close cohort, which this is, 30 odd people is a very small number of people really in the scheme of things, just to share and get the initial sort of reaction from you guys. So that's the aim of today. Let's see if my clicker works. It does. So to start with, I'm going to set the scene just a little bit, and give you the topics, or at least the program of what we're going to work through and how long it's going to take. So this is the highlights of the white paper. We're not going to put a literal white paper on the screen and read through it, although Jay does have elements that are very in-depth. I reckon it'll be about an hour, including questions, but we'll see how we go. We did start a little bit earlier for a reason, but we don't want to keep you longer than we need to. And for any in-depth questions, it's probably worth us going back to the team, having a chat, and then doing a decent write-up so that everybody, either in the forum or in Discord, can be part and parcel of the feedback and the response to that feedback as well. So the 4 topics, I think there's 4, there might be 5, 4 topics we're covering. The facts and the fundamentals, where we started, what the expectations are, the promises we've made, and the stuff that we're working with. How that then translates into now we're getting towards launch. We're obviously in this extended launch rollout period. We've done that for a very sensible reason, but there's a lot we need to consider. The platform has been in development one way or another for 18 years. So there's a huge amount that's gone on within that time frame that we need to honor as best we can when the network comes to life in January in its full form. And the updates that are going to be made to the white paper, including the allocations, I hope you're going to be pretty pleased with how we've broken this all apart and put it back together again. But I guess you'll tell us that. And then just to touch on builders and applications, there was a conversation a little bit earlier on in Discord around that. And I know that's something that David and the team, myself included, are really, really focused on now. Once you've got the network fundamentals in place, it's all a little bit pointless if there's nobody building on the network and therefore no new users coming into it and no new data being uploaded to it. So we'll start at the beginning then, shall we? So the first topic area, as I said, are facts and fundamentals. Let us begin. So the first is our uniqueness. We are uniquely positioned in market if we're brave enough to be so. And what I mean by that is Arweave offers permanent storage. Filecoin's been out there for a long time. IPFS is doing some of the things we're doing. What's interesting, and if you look back at the white paper we did, or the white paper update we did way back in March, we put a comparison table in that. And I think what's extraordinary is, and quite rightly so after this development timeline, is all of the guys that are out there are focusing on 1 or 2 specific elements. Autonomi, formerly known as Safe Network, under the stewardship of David and the amazing team that's been around for years and stuck at it for years, is doing a combination of all of them. And that's what makes it truly unique. So we really cannot compromise on any single element, whether that's quantum security of data, whether that's the permanence of data, whether that's the truly decentralized nature of how that data is hosted and stored, and the security that's, given as a result of that. None of those things can be compromised, because without that, we cannot claim that we're uniquely positioned in what really does feel like quite a crowded marketplace. But in actual fact, the more you sort of scratch the surface and dig into that, you realize it's not. There's a lot of noise building on it, but not a lot really of, I would say, direct competitors at the sort of the layer that we are developing at as a network for other folks to genuinely build something different on top. And I think without that fundamental layer, even the likes of Elon Musk have talked about it, you need a decentralized internet for AI to really thrive for everybody, rather than just be a tool for big corporations. And before we introduce stuff like robotics into our everyday lives, and that's something really important. And we, as a network, are uniquely placed to do that. It's taken almost 20 years to get there. It's no small feat. And most of you guys are more aware of that than I am, for sure, having been a newbie this year. It's great saying all of that stuff. It's great, talking about a one-time fee, data storage forever, quantum security, the data never going anywhere. We have to prove it. We are only going to be able to prove it with scale, but also our econ design, which was something that we were, I think, probably hadn't really been much of a focus, if I'm honest, of the guys, because it was very technical based. It was almost an afterthought. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way at all. But the idea that what we're doing and the philosophy of what we're doing is so important, and what it will, the benefits that will give people. But actually, people don't really move and shift and do things unless they're incentivized to do so. Now, that incentive can be amazing experiences, but of course, when a network first launches, there are no experiences. There is nothing on it. It's empty. There is no data. There are no applications. There are no big names. There are no beautiful, sort of wonderful UX designs and those sort of things to engage with. You're really having to start literally from scratch. And we do now have an internet that exists that is a pretty compelling place, and people spend a lot of time there. So what we need to do is just to make sure that whatever we're doing, the node operators, the people that are hosting this network, are incentivized to do so that we can guarantee data permanence, because it's super important to stand by our message and for that to be real. And of course, once we start attracting folks onto the network, there's a snowball effect that can happen. So we need the early builders. It's like the Wild West. We need the people that are going out in the wagons, establishing those first buildings, those first experiences, those first territories, so that others can come and develop and grow as well, because confidence breeds confidence. So if we can really focus on that initial phase, and that's something I would say to everyone, and most of the people like in the forum would already appreciate this. This isn't a product launch. This is a network launch. It's going to take up to 5 years to even start to see how this thing is actually going to look. It needs to get off its hands and knees. It's in its embryonic form, and it's going to take a while to really start to take shape. And that's okay. The internet wasn't built in a year or two. The likes of Facebook and whatnot have been around. They're over 20 years old now, and we kind of forget where we started versus where we are. Now, obviously, the expectations are a lot higher. The good news is the technology is also a lot better, and the infrastructure that we've got is very, very, very compelling. So fingers crossed, we'll be able to get that sort of attractiveness much quicker than the original guys did. But I guess the proof of the pudding is in the eating with all that stuff. So how are we going to get there? The three most important things. This entire network, spoiler alert, depends on data. Without data being uploaded to the network, there is no benefit of really node owners hosting the network, because that is how payments are made. So a piece of data or a set of data is uploaded. Nodes get paid, they quote, and they get paid for that data. They've got an incentive, and so on and so forth. The amount of data out there in the world is enormous. We'll talk about that in a minute. So that is a pretty safe bet that data is going to carry on increasing exponentially. However, we have to attract it to our network, and that's where the applications come in. So we do need builders. We need stuff that are using data because they're developing and they're growing and they're scaling on the Autonomi network. And of course, everybody needs incentives. So that's not just node owners that are running this network and hosting all this data in perpetuity, but it is also those builders that can build in any number of places right now. And also, if you think about node runners, although we're not charging people for nodes like a lot of people in Web3 are, because we want everybody to have the ability to be involved. And, this needs to be a truly distributed, not just decentralized network. They could be running other nodes on their spare capacity. So it's why run an Autonomi node versus some other programmatic thing that they could be doing. Whether it's rubbish or not doesn't matter. If they're earning a token that they can cash out and they're making money from it, that's probably quite a compelling use for their spare capacity. So we do accept that we're not competing maybe with a like-for-like offering, but we are competing for everybody that's saying, come run a node and make some money. I do want to focus in on data out of those three specifically, because it is the fundamental, it's the fuel that's going to make the whole network work or not, as the case may be. The entire premise of this, and something that David absolutely stands by, and I think the data that we've got in verifies, is that the amount of data we are producing will continue to increase, and it will continue to increase exponentially as well. There are 4.8 zettabytes produced every single year now. And just to put in context how much a zettabyte is, if you sat down to watch in a gigabyte, HD format, a zettabyte of data, it would take you 116 1,000 years. That's how much data we are producing, and it's only increasing. So to say that we've got enough content for this network is somewhat the understatement. We just need to attract that data to the network. Data is important because it pays for those nodes to be online doing their thing. It also provides token utility. If you want to use the network, you need the token to upload that data, one-time payment there forever. It's going to attract more builders by having more users there. Builders don't want to come and build in an empty environment where they're going to have all of the problems that already exist on the internet exacerbated. User acquisition, being able to have support, being able to have promotion. It's really difficult if you're not flying to have people join that flight with you. It also, the more builders that come, the better the token is doing, the more nodes that are coming online. That's going to increase the desirability of the network all over. So I guess what I'm trying to make with these sort of bullet points is that none of these things happen in a sequential format. It would be lovely if they did, but in actual fact, it's all happening at once. All of these things are symbiotic and they need to exist together. It's an ecosystem. And ultimately, the most important role of this ecosystem is that it benefits the people that own the data. You guys, me, my mum, whoever it is. All of a sudden, not only do we have complete control, sovereignty, and privacy over our data, we can put it to work for our benefit if we choose to. We don't get it taken from us. We don't get it extracted from us. We don't get it played back to us. We don't have to believe in promises made. So all of this, whilst it's a great ecosystem and we can innovate and we can build new and exciting products, the fundamental is we need to take a little bit of control back of the internet. Having such a powerful tool that is completely ruled by the few, no matter what their intentions are, doesn't seem like a very smart move to me. And that's something that I think autonomy is really going to help with if we position it right. So for those of you that don't know, you all probably do, but this is going to lead into Jay talking around the tokenomics and the way the emissions and various other things work on the network and what the updates to the white paper are. But I just wanted to display it because this is how my brain works. It's super simple. I like to see things just laid out. Really, basically, I work with some of the most intelligent people I think I've ever come across. And sometimes I have to do the Michael Scott thing of like, explain it to me like I'm 5. Not necessarily because I don't always understand it. I'm relatively impatient as an individual. And I also think we don't have the benefit of time for many folks. They don't have hours to get their head around what this thing is. So in the spirit of that, I just wanted to show you like the sort of the thought process, I guess, I had when I was trying to understand, okay, over all these years, what was the plan? How does it look? And how does it actually add value to the people that we need the most, which really are the data uploaders and the node runners, right? Like they're the two people that without this network, there is no network. So the upload of data is the most essential thing this network has. Without data, there is no network, essentially. We need that data coming onto the network. That's something through testing. We, as MaizeSafe, have been running uploaders. We need now real data coming on, and we need real data at scale. That is something that keeps me awake at night. That's my focus. That's why we talk about partners, people with big existing data sets that can come and utilize the network. That's important because what happens is the node owners then quote for the data to be stored. And as a result, if they're successful in their quotes, they get to earn token. Now, our node owners are probably people, I would assume, that are sitting with quite a lot of token already. So when they earn token, they can do, what we kind of want them to do with it, which is use it and upload more data to the network. But of course, you might have more token than you have data need, in which case, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to sell your token. And if you sell your token, the expectation is somebody is going to buy that token from somewhere, hopefully that's very accessible, and they are going to take that token and they are going to use it to upload data to the network. You can see why builders are now more important, but they're actually going to have to go into market to make an effort to buy token to upload it to the network. The other thing, of course, that our node owners earning token or the people that are buying that token from node owners selling that token can do is hold that token. And you can see that there's a lot of deep in propositions out there right now. Altcoin season is definitely upon us. Gaming tokens are going absolutely bananas. So people will hold a token if they feel that there's going to be future value in that token, and therefore it's a good idea to hold on to it. Of course, once you hold a token, you can then release that token, you can sell it back into the market, or you can use it to, utilize the network, upload your data to the network. But you can see if this whole thing is powered by data uploads and incentives for people to hold on to that data, the importance of the token itself and the value of that token. And that's what this session is about. It's less about the technology and the cleverness of the technology, which you guys know intimately well, or most of you, and you've been talking to David about literally for years. This is about, okay, well, how do we protect the network and make sure it's something that's valuable for node owners to want to keep supporting, so that they can not only just cover the costs of running their nodes, so that they're not just feeling like they're losing out by not running different types of nodes rather than autonomy nodes, and ensuring that people are continuing to come to the network and utilize it and hopefully innovate on it, because my goodness, there's some exciting stuff you can do and you don't have to worry about all the ridiculous infrastructure costs and the privacy and all of the other things that come with it. In all of this, what we must do, what we have to do, is ensure that the data will always be there. That is the fundamental difference of this network. Like an Arweave is promising that, but if you look at Arweave's upload amounts, it's really struggling to get data in any scale. And the reason for that, Jay will go into a little bit, but that's because of the pricing and how the token works, or not, as the case may be, right? So you can have a successful token, but the problem is that doesn't really work if it's inhibiting the network itself. We don't want to use this idea that we're almost utilizing the fact that if capacity goes down, nodes drop off, and therefore price goes up to encourage nodes, because you're messing with the volatility of the network in order to get nodes back into the network. And that feels a little bit dangerous when your promise is, data, one upload, and it's there forever. You really can't mess with the capacity of the network in that way. So you can see we've, even from that explanation, we've had a lot of debates back and forth about how we do this in a decentralized way rather than a centralized way, how we make sure we're encouraging the right behaviors whilst ensuring that the token is worth earning. It has been a little bit of a conundrum, I will be honest with you. So the considerations and expectations, and then we'll go into the white paper updates. So there's three things I wanted to flag here. Token holders. If you're a shareholder in MaidSafe and you invested in the original, I think, Bank to the Future and a few other ways, and you knew David directly years ago, you are going to get paid out in token. If you were part of the ICO, you're holding token. If you participated in any of the beta node reward program, and even the current leaderboards, you're a token holder. It's really important, and as the MaidSafe CEO, it's my responsibility actually in regards to shareholders to make sure you get the best returns possible. I can say that if we're giving you a token, it needs to be worth something because you're getting that for your shares. So there's something that we've had to really consider is how do we make sure it's lovely, the virtuous nature of the network and what it's trying to do, but how do we make sure that the token holders in and amongst that are rewarded? We also need to recognize that this is a network that's going to scale over many, many years, and we need to give it the time to scale. Hammering on this network in the first probably 3 years is brutally unfair because it's going to have so much downward pressure, and we need it. We need it to be able to stand up. It has to be able to do its thing. And so we need to buy it some time to actually get its feet under itself, get some people building, get users using it without even knowing it's autonomy, because they're interested in the applications that are running autonomy rather than autonomy itself. I think in the fullness of time, what we would absolutely love is that if you're running anything on autonomy or even the applications, you're just running a node in the background because you might as well. It's almost like it's such a utility play that every single one of us that's on the internet is running in an autonomy node, just because that's kind of what you do, like having your router or your Wi-Fi connection. It just feels like the two things go together. And that's why we're looking at from next year, once we've got the TGE, the token generation event out of the way, mobile nodes and those kind of things. So we're going to continue at a network level to carry on innovating as well, to make sure that it's as distributed as possible. And that's the next and most critical thing. People talk a lot about decentralization. In Web3, there's not that many projects. Once you go beyond like a Bitcoin that's truly decentralized, it's very difficult because there are always some compromises in there. I think what's as important, if not more important in some ways, is the how much it's actually distributed. So you could be decentralized and have like 10 folks running 1,000 node each and say, well, it's decentralized, but it's not evenly distributed or truly distributed. So the idea is that everyday people, non-technical people, can be running nodes and participating in this ecosystem in a meaningful way, and that everybody, as a result of that, is safer and it's scaling, and the internet is therefore owned again by everybody rather than just a select few. So these are the three things that we've had to factor in and make sure in these sort of the updates and the allocations that we are creating from our maximum supply, that we're factoring these sort of three elements. And they don't always coexist very happily together. And I'm sure you guys have probably figured that out, which has also led to quite a few debates. The good thing is, people like David will always stand by their integrity and the vision of the project and what it's meant to do. And then you've got people like me that will say, that's great, but in reality, how do we ensure that this survives and that node owners are going to keep running this data long after we're gone? I'm not saying, this is a bit of a build up for Jay here, I'm not saying that Jay's got all of the answers to that, but he does have, and he is going to show you Notion, which has some of the sort of the key updates in regards to the white paper. Jay, are you ready?
I'm not 100% sure, but I guess that doesn't really matter
Let's
now.
see.
So
It really doesn't. It's kind of too late. The only thing I will check is whether I've given you permission to share, because that could be interesting if I haven't done that. Let me just check. Can you share? Yeah, you're sharing. That's fine. I have done it. Go for it.
okay.
I'll mute myself and hand over to Jay. If you guys haven't met Jay, he has been, I think, on a Discord stage before. Jay is leading our data and tokenomics over at MaySafe and on behalf of the Autonomi Network. And he's involved in a few other things that you might get to hear about in a little bit as well. Over to you, Jay.
All right. So I know the section is called White Paper Updates, but it's really just talking about what we are doing and why we are doing it in a way that we are doing it, and just to explain our reasonings. So, so while working on the economy and the incentive model for the network, we were focusing on how we can create a system that can really support the revolutionary idea that David and the team put together in the best way possible, while also ensuring that we will have the right amount of incentive in the system to keep the network going indefinitely. So in this today, I will talk about two key ideas. The first idea is going to be about whether we can build a scalable and sustainable storage system that only requires one upfront payment per file. And the second idea is really about understanding what it means to be able to utilize everyday devices. So let's think about the conventional pricing model for cloud storage systems for a moment. Most cloud services are charged by gigabytes per month. So this means the price will depend on the size of the file as well as the duration of the storage. And this raises some interesting challenges. So this means inherently someone will know to whom data belongs to, and also someone will have the ability and the right to delete the files when the payments are not made. So in the user's perspective, one can ask themselves whether they truly own their data. Because if some other people can delete their file, or if some other people can also see who the data belongs to, then you might not actually own the data. But we are kind of okay with this pricing model for now because that's what everyone's using. And Autonomi Network, as you know, is completely different. No one will know which data you own or to whom a piece of data belongs to. And also no one will have the authority or right to delete the data. So this is all great, but then we cannot employ the conventional pricing system, right? Because we don't know who the data belongs to, so we cannot charge people on an ongoing basis. So we need to allow users to make an upfront payment at the time of data upload. So we're going to look at whether that system is scalable and whether that system is sustainable. So in doing so, we are making two key assumptions, very important assumptions. The first assumption is that the raw resource cost is going to go down exponentially over time into the future. So when we say raw resource cost, those are the resources required for storage system. This will include hard disk space. This will include the price for bandwidth as well as processing power. And as you already know, this has been the case for the past few decades. The price of all of those resources have been declining exponentially in the past. So we believe, or we are making an assumption that this trend is going to persist. So in an equation form, if you prefer this, I don't. But if you prefer this, what this means is that the resource price is going to decay exponentially into the future. And the second assumption is that the data volume or data upload rate is going to increase exponentially. So as we know, we are producing more data than ever, and we are also persisting more data than ever. And most of the new applications, not most, but many of the new applications that are getting released these days are data-intensive applications. So you are making an assumption that any successful data storage system, if we are to consider a data storage system to be successful, it needs to onboard exponentially more data moving forward. So in a mathematical form, this will be something like this, right? So the upload rate at time t is going to increase exponentially with time. And then this is the expression for the cumulative amount of data uploaded to the network. So this is the total amount of data on the network. So with those two assumptions, we can put those two assumptions together and what conclusion we can derive from it. So let's think about it for a minute. At any point in the future, what we're going to have is the data on the network that's already on the network, right? So that's the C, right? C is the amount of data that's on the network cumulatively. And then if we multiply the resource price at that point of time, we can understand how much incentive needs to be paid out at that specific point of time to keep the network going. And that incentive amount is going to be determined by the price that uploaders are paying and also the amount of data that's being uploaded at that moment. So as long as this incentive amount is larger than the or this payment amount is larger than the amount of than the cost of running or maintaining the network, this system is going to be sustainable and stable. So because we wrote down those mathematical expressions for the resource prices as well as the upload rate, we can kind of solve this equation, right? And what we're going to have is something like this. The price at time t, this is the fair price, I would say. The fair price at time t is going to look like this. And it looks terrible, but what does it actually mean? So P0K, this is just a constant, so we can forget about it, and we can focus on those two terms in the bracket. So if we do focus on those two terms, this blue line shows you how this first term is going to change, and this orange line shows you how the second term is going to change. And this final green line shows you what this, the term within the bracket actually changes with time, with time t. So this is actually a very interesting shape, isn't it? The fair price is going to initially increase because this second term decays more quickly than the first term. The price is going to become more and more expensive as people upload more data. Well, that's intuitively understandable, right? More people uploaded data, there's more data to maintain, so the price is going to be more expensive. Makes sense. But we can see that quite soon, the price is going to now decrease exponentially. And because the first term becomes the dominant term after a certain period of time. So this might be quite unintuitive, but what this means is that although you have a lot of data on the network, because the price of infrastructure or price of the resources is getting cheaper, and also more people are uploading data, so the price or the cost is distributed to more data uploaders, the price we need to charge to keep the network going is going to decrease exponentially. So it might not sound like a interesting idea. But what this means is that even if we create a pricing system that allows users to pay one upfront payment to sustain the network at the time of upload, this system is going to be able to reduce its price exponentially moving forward. So it's going to be an affordable storage system, and it's also going to be a lot more convenient storage system because people need to only pay once, and it's a storage system that can give the data ownership truly to the users. So this is why we think this upfront payment model is going to work, or it can work. So normally I would ask whether you have any questions, but I will look at the Q&A section, so I'll just move on to the second part. So the second part is about what it actually means to utilize everyday devices. So we talked about how different factors such as resource prices and upload rate will affect the fair storage price. However, it will be very challenging for us to predict how quickly resource prices are going to reduce and how quickly data upload rate is going to increase and so on. And potentially that's going to be a meaningless exercise. So instead of making those predictions ourselves to figure out what the fair price needs to be, we are going to use supply and demand as the proxy metric to determine the fair storage price or fair upload price at any point of time in the future. So the more storage space is supplied, we treat that as an indicator of the reduction of raw resources. So that's important. We are not going to actually measure how cheap the resources are. We're not going to go out and buy hard disks and research the market. What we're going to do is we're going to look at how much storage space is being supplied to the network and use that as an indicator to determine the raw resource price. So those two are almost the same thing, right? How much storage space is being supplied, it's going to tell us how cheap the resources are. So if we consider those two concepts as the same thing, then that concept can be used in a fairly exciting way, because now we don't need to wait until there is a technological breakthrough to reduce the resource price. Instead, we can also devise other ways to allow more people to participate in the system and more people to supply their resources to the network. And that's going to have the same, that's going to effectively lower the resource price as far as the network is concerned. So the significance of this is that, if we look at some other decentralized storage platforms, they often impose fairly strict hardware requirements for the node operators. So this means node operators quite often need to make capital investments just to participate in the system. And then that means there needs to be a return on investment or ROI calculation. So that is a barrier to entry. If you think you cannot make money by running your node after making the investment, you're not going to participate. And this is not only the case for the decentralized storage solutions, but this is also the case for most of the cloud providers. Those cloud providers need to make huge amount of investment in data centers, and they need the pricing model that allows them to recover their investment. But in our case, because participants can run nodes on everyday devices that they already own, they can run nodes without running this return on investment calculation. So as a result, the network can provide the storage spaces at the lower resource cost compared to our competitors. And you might think, oh, that might not be a good thing for the node operators because that means you cannot generate enough income, or you're not going to receive enough incentive. But as we looked at the model previously, this low price is essentially going to generate a higher rate of data upload. And at the end of the day, the amount of incentive each node is going to receive is not going to be dramatically lower than other platforms. So that's the significance of using these everyday devices. And now this is directly related to how the quotes or prices are being actually being calculated on the network every day. So although this looks a little bit painful, but the only thing you need to understand is this. This R here is the ratio between the amount of record a node is holding and the max amount of record a node is allowed to hold. So when R is 1, that means the node is completely full. When R is 0, that means the node is completely empty. So if you think about what this means this is essentially the supply and demand. The supply is record max, which is the available space. Demand is record current, which is the total amount of data that's on the network. So when the network fills up, the price is going to increase, and when the network is empty, the price is going to go down. So this is how we convert all those theoretical analysis into the actual pricing system. What's quite significant is that is the first term here, 1 divided by end price. So the situation we want to avoid is, nothing happens to the network, but the market is inherently volatile, and if the token price changes significantly, we don't want that to impact the size of the network. So that's why the quotes are going to be normalized by token price, so that those market volatility is not going to impact the network significantly. So this is why it's really important for us to understand the importance of the everyday devices and how the network uses supply demand to calculate the quote or the prices. So we are almost there. I have 2 really small bits to add. The first one is the emission incentive. So if we look at this fair price curve again, it looks great, right? The price is going to decrease over time, like exponentially. It's great. But we see that initially the price is going to increase as people upload more data. So it is going to be there's going to be a significant friction during the early stage of the network. So that's why we created this emission incentive. So this is essentially the incentive for the node operators, but not coming from the data payment directly, but coming from the initial token allocation. So you can think of it as almost a subsidy for the data uploaders. So they can pay less for uploading data, and the node operators are going to earn more than what people pay. So this emission incentive is going to effectively lower the price of upload during this initial period of the network. So, and the second part is the second one I wanted to add was the incentive reserve. So we talked about how data upload rate is going to increase and how resource prices are going to get cheaper. But we know that those changes are not going to be 100% smooth. There are going to be temporary increase in resource prices, and there can be temporary decrease in upload rate, right? Because that's how real world works. So we want to have some safety mechanisms in place so that when those things happen, we can keep providing enough incentives for the node operators. So every time an uploader makes a payment, a small portion of that payment is going to go into this incentive reserve. And this incentive reserve is going to be kept here almost indefinitely, unless there is a temporary decrease in upload rate or temporary decrease in incentive amount. So if we do think there's a temporary, if we do think there are those temporary conditions in place, then this incentive reserve is going to be released to the current node operators so that the existing nodes can be incentivized properly. Both this incentive reserve and the emission payment are they all involve quite a few different parameters, and we are in the process of finalizing those parameters, and we are doing that based on the data we are collecting from the test networks that we are running at the moment and we have run in the past. So I wanted to say thank you to those who participate in the test nets, and also I encourage everyone here to participate in our future test nets as well. So yeah, that's everything, and Box is going to go through some of the details about the token allocation.
Thank you, Jay. Wow. Before we jump back to token allocation, that was great. Couple of questions. Wouter is putting you all to shame, guys, because there's a decent number of questions. I think 3 already in from Wouter. I'm going to pick up on one, if that's okay. And then Jay, I'm going to throw a couple to you just to get an initial reaction from. The one, look at me cherry picking the questions. That's a bit mean on Jay, isn't it? But the question regarding what happens if Dropbox or Google adapt and they do one-time payment only, would that be a problem? There are some people out there, Wasabi is another one. I was looking at their website the other day. They do, and they've got some big clients, BBC in the UK and a few others. And that's what they're talking about is the one-time payment upload. I think this is where I go back to the very beginning of the presentation, which is around it's not just about one-time only payment. It's about all of the other pieces that come with that: the privacy, the self-sovereignty, the data ownership, the quantum security. It's the decentralized nature of it. So it's actually a misaligned incentive for the likes of Google. They obviously they're going through some problems in the US with them trying to break them apart right now because they do have this monopoly. So I think the yes, on the face value, you could say they're clearly all of them are the gorillas in the room, but that's the point. It's that they are offering a centralized service, and centralized services, as I mentioned in a talk I was doing the other week in Oxford, that they are an oxymoron in their very nature, because you use a centralized service because of the security, because of the terms of service, because of there's somebody on the end of the telephone, because of the prices, etc., etc. But then on the flip side of that, it's the honeypot for hackers, it's the single point of failure, it's the beholden to contracts, it's the some of the trust that you have to put in those providers, and when they go down, they cause a big problem for everybody. So it's an interesting one, but I think the decentralization part of the proposition should not be ignored, as well as the security, as well as the convenience, and the fact that if you're having to pay to access it every month or even every year or even on a renewal basis of multiple years, it's not really your data. It's residing and sitting with somebody else, and you've basically relinquished ownership of it. Now, 99.9% of people in the world may not care about that, and that's okay. What's interesting is what you can do if you're not having to worry about that infrastructure and all of those terms and restrictions that come around with hosting that data, and instead you can just build innovative, whether it's AI applications or something completely different on top of it, using private data in new and exciting ways. And I think that's when things get really exciting. Jay, there's a couple of ones for you, if you don't mind. Yorick was asking, did I hear it correctly that the network can determine a price and not necessarily an individual node? Is that correct? That's not correct, right? Can you maybe just do a quick circle around that for us? Is that
Right,
possible?
right. There's a short-term and long-term solution. While we stay on the
You have
blockchain,
such a squeaky chair. It's really funny. I can hear your chair. Sorry, carry on.
um, I'm going to buy a new chair, but I'm going to expense it. Anyways, so there's a short-term and long-term. There are two different answers. So while we use the blockchain solution as our payment layer, we can utilize the price oracles. They are quite decentralized. So price oracles, which allows you the nodes to check the price of the token currently. So as a network, we're not telling nodes what the current price is. Rather, individual nodes are going to check what the market price of the token is. And that is going to be based on the blockchain oracles that are widely being used for various different projects or products. And once we migrate to our native payment system, that's going to require another layer that allows that that native token layer to understand what the market price of the token is. We can think of this as a little bit of a compromise, because now you think, okay, it's connected to the external system. However, we thought this is a needed one because we quite often see significant volatility within the market. Token price can increase by 100% in a week. It can drop by 80% in a week. If we don't rely on those token prices, external token prices, then what that means is that the network needs to adjust the size of it accordingly. So when token price goes down by 80%, the network size needs to reduce significantly to provide enough incentive for the node operators. And this constant volatility in the market, and as a result, this constant volatility in the network size is something we wanted to avoid. So that's why we are utilizing those price oracles. So
Thank you,
it
Jay.
was a very long answer. It was not
No,
necessary. So
it's
I
it's
apologize.
it's really good. I think that covers a little bit of Roy's question as well, which was how will the node know the ant token price? I think you've probably, with your Oracle answer, incorporated some of that as well. If he stays on mute, he means yes. He feels like he's covered it.
Yes.
Good. Okay, keep them, guys. If you've got oh, I'm only looking at answer questions. No, I'm looking at open questions. If there's other Jay's already answered another one. If there's any other questions, please do put them in because we can, like I say, extrapolate, like extract it rather out afterwards. Yorick, I'm going to come back to yours. I'm going to dive back into the presentation. Jay, if you aren't presenting, you should be able to see the Q&A and maybe you can do a typing answer to that one. Okay, so we are...
Just to cover really, really
Oh, go
briefly
on.
the most recent question that Yorick posted. So we fully recognize the issue of nodes providing slightly a low quote than others to game the system. So I haven't really explained this part in the call, but that's why we are pivoting away from pay the lowest quote system. So a node is no longer be able to monopolize the payment by quoting the lowest price. There is going to be a group consensus mechanism around the quote selection. So even if you provide slightly low quote, it is going to be impossible for you to game the system. So yeah.
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to go back into presentation mode if you guys don't mind. We're going to just talk about allocations. There's a couple of other things I'll touch on while we do this as well as we go through it. But I thought this was going to be really important context for you all. So when Jay and I were relatively new here, we released an updated white paper with the team, I think back in March, maybe. And there was a little bit of sticker shock around it, around some of the centralization aspects, which took form of the foundation, questions around that, supply, emissions, a whole plethora of potential issues. And so this is something we've been really hammering on as a team and going back and forth with the foundation committee, because of course the token itself is not generated by MadeSafe, the company. It's generated, the generation event actually happens from the foundation, the not-for-profit foundation side. And that's really important because there shouldn't be a private centralized entity in the middle of all of this. That would be, completely counter to everything we've just been talking about. So the original emissions looked it looked exactly like this. The format's different, but the numbers are the same, I assure you. So this is what's currently in the white paper version that was produced earlier this year. The storage emissions was going to be, actually, I think it's a fraction under 49%. The maximum supply was 4.2 something. You can read the number yourself, billion. And there was this thing called the emission reserve, which was 21%. That's not, Jay's talking about a reserve there that when you upload to the network, a certain amount of the token is taken and put in a reserve. No one has control over that in the sense that that's not a centralized pot for people to dip in and out of. That's going to be something under smart contract in the first instance, before we move to native, that will be locked and only used under certain conditions when the node owners need it. So it's not for any other purpose, just to be really clear on that one. So that basically put 70% of the future emissions in sort of the open market to be distributed or emitted over time. The remaining 30% was going to be produced at Genesis, which is what's happening in January with the ANT token. And the split was as follows. The shareholders, people that were involved, Bank to the Future, and invested in MadeSafe, the company, years and years ago, they will, for their shares, be getting token for their shares, 108.6, I believe, or 106.8, one or the other, for their shares. The people that hold token, that can be OmniMade, that can be eMade, that can be token 1-for-1 that you've gained during the beta node reward programs. And then there was this royalties pool, which was something that basically was going to be used as incentives and other ways to help the network in its growth. That was relatively undefined, to put it delicately. And so we took a real hard look at that, and also the maximum supply. And we've made some big calls and working with the committee as well to make sure they're comfortable with it. Some big changes are coming for this one. So it looks a lot different now. The maximum supply is actually being reduced right down to 1.5 billion tokens. So we've taken that supply right down, and the community is going to get just under 70% of those, a billion tokens distributed over time. Some of those will come through emissions. There's a 50-year, this is a long-term network, a 50-year schedule that will deprecate or depreciate over time. And then the token holders, rather than taking 11% of the supply as originally coined, they're going to take actually 30% of the supply, the total max supply, that 452 million tokens going out to you guys that are already swapping or exchanging one for one. The remaining parts of the pool make up shareholders. So they're getting, rather than 5% of the total max supply, they're going to take home 14% of the max supply. Shareholders will be on an earn out. It's going to be sort of on a locked basis. So it'll unlock gradually. That might feel mean to some shareholders, but it's actually to protect you. All of that, which I know also sounds awful, because that seems to be the line that every government in the Western world is using. But the idea being the network is going to take a while to scale. So doing that gradually, we don't suspect that a lot of the token holders or all the token holders from Omnichain will come over, because some of them want to go direct to native token rather than have an Ethereum-based network token. So what we're trying to do is just make sure we're looking after token holders, shareholders, from a price stability point of view. So you will be able to exit your positions should you choose to, rather than hold on to them over time. Clearly, we would like you to hold on to them because we think the network is going to go places. The foundation's going to get 250 million tokens, which is different to where it was. It was getting sort of circa 14%. It's now getting 17%. But I just want to break down for you what that's made up of. And again, there's a locked period. So the foundation is not getting 250 million tokens at Genesis at all. This will be on a smart contract as well. We're going to be using all of the EVM technologies, because we now have them until we go obviously native. So the idea, these tokens will be locked, and so they won't all be available straight away. There's a 50-year release schedule in place for the foundation, or will be in place for the foundation. And just to give you a sense of how we're going to allocate, the foundation's going to allocate those earnings or those token pools. In year one, although it's getting 20% of that 250 million tokens, 80% of that is going to be spent on things like exchanges, market makers, so that we're supporting token value. Then it will be the incentives. The incentives are for builders on the platform, making sure that we're rewarding those people that are sort of building out on that Western front. And you can see through years 2 to 5, about 34% of the foundation's allocation will again be on token support, market making, etc. And then that drops to 31% years 6 through 12. The remaining, it's about 15% of token that is left in the allocation, is spread out over the following years, up to 50 years. So we are trying to automate this as much as is humanly possible. Now we've got EVM, that's a little bit easier because we do have smart contracts, but we've, native payment token, mobile nodes, network security updates, they will continue to progress post TGE. The network team is still in place. MadeSafe will have a good year or two's run rate anyway to be able to carry on paying the engineers at cost. So we're not in any issue there at all. But it's just to make you sort of aware that we're keeping this much more much more transparent, much more lean, and bringing that max supply right down in order to really help, we hope, the health of the token and therefore the scalability of the network, because the more incentivized people are to run nodes, the bigger the network can get, the more eyeballs we can get on it, the more builders we bring onto it, and everybody wins. And that's what we're trying to create. I had an obsession in my previous role about this triple win scenario, and I believe it's absolutely present here. And there's a reason why I came and took this role, because I could see that. Okay, last section. Jay, I'm going to blame you for how long this has gone on for. I'm joking. Last section then is builders and applications. Applications being not applications for grants, but for like literal apps on the network. So we have some obviously we have some plans here. It's one of the most critical features of the network. It's not a network if people aren't part of it and aren't joining it. Talking of that, just before I move on to that, there's one point I did miss, which is incentives for token holders. So we've been looking at, you know, collateral, staking, that kind of stuff, real token utility stuff. We're keeping it separate because because it won't touch the network per se. This is something that, you know, it's part of the reward structure on top. So for us, it's another avenue. What we want to get right is the you know, the emissions, the supply, the flow of that token, and then we can further look after folks who are looking after their token from there. So as we've got updates on that, we'll let you know. So builders and applications then, final section. We are forming a squad. Hopefully the squad know, I think Nick has told them, but we've got an amazing chap that's kind of been parachuted into the MadeSafe team. We've already got Mick and Benno and Anselm doing some amazing stuff. David is getting back to health, which is amazing. He's a complete troublemaker, and it's been brilliant having him back. API, SDKs, we are absolutely needing to improve the way we're doing all of this stuff. There is no point in building something that no one else can build on. So giving builders, this is tools, obviously, the toolkits they need to be able to come in, create applications. We are going to have a bit of it's probably less stealth mode if I announce it, but before the builder programs launch, which is post TGE, we are going to have a pre-builder program so that we've got 5 or 6 companies, ventures, individuals that we can work very closely with, so that they're identifying exactly what they need. And it means by the time the builder program goes live post TGE, that not only have we got some real insights into where the holes were and making sure that it's a program that really works well, and that we're rewarding the right things. It's been a long day, but that actually we've got a website that's singing, because we've got case studies, we've got prototypes, we've got, you know, showcasing of what you can do on this network. We need to inspire people that they've got a whole new toolkit to build from, and I think that's really exciting. So giving builders the ability to actually have the access to the tools they need to build the stuff that makes them excited is something that will only ever benefit the network. If you know anybody, we're very aware of what's going on. We track, obviously, the forum, we track Discord, we know who the people that have been in the community for a long time are. We're aware of some other propositions that might sit really nicely. At the minute, you know, there's a social prop, there's farming, there's finance, or sort of token trading. There's music. Have I said that one? There's a few others. So there's sort of 6 or 7, security, hardware as well. So if there's someone that you think would really benefit or be able to help us over the coming weeks, it's a 6-week program. Do let us know. You can always reach out to Rusty. He loves making friends. So do talk to Rusty, and then we can see if they're a fit for the program. That is a pretty nice incentive to come and be part of that and to help us develop it. And then obviously that will benefit everybody once that goes live. The other part of that, of course, is making sure that growth is something that they're rewarded by. You'll see previously in the allocations that we've got that incentive payment. So that is us working out how to design well, it's effectively, Jim spoke about it quite a lot, the sort of the royalty programs. So the apps are doing really well, can actually get paid by the network itself, and the foundation making sure that funds are going in an automated way to that. So again, that's something we'll be cracking that nut over the coming months, so that when the program goes live, that's all there ready to go, and that will sort of grow. It will start slow, then it will grow, then it will depreciate. When you think about the size of the builders coming on, we want to reward obviously the successful applications, but we don't want the big dogs coming in and then getting all the rewards. So it's got to be like those pioneers that should really benefit from that if they're obviously successful. And then last but not least, for the builders and the applications, it's revolution, right? It's making app developers want to come here because they can build stuff that they literally just can't build on some of these other protocols, that they can actually keep user data away from what they're doing and leave it with the users. And I think if people, this is one thing that David used to get super frustrated about when I was first speaking to him, is that I've created something and you can build anything, and yet people just want to build what already exists. I don't understand why they want to do that. So I think this idea of, when you're getting into genuinely private AI, when you're into robotics, when you're into some of these bleeding edge technologies, what is possible when users can hold on to their data and not have to give it up to you or to anybody else, and yet you can still benefit from it. I think that's quite exciting. And then you've got all the usual sort of internet things that you would expect to be there, but maybe with a couple of cherries on top, because of the infrastructure that's sitting underneath and the cost saving as a result of that. So I think having somebody like David that really is at the forefront of being able to visualize and sort of be that visionary, and then having some proof of concepts there. We are forming a squad, just so you know, that is going to build stuff on this network. It's not connected to MadeSafe. It's independently funded of MadeSafe, but we want to showcase the network as well. And so we're going to be out there building too. And I think some of our gateway applications, some of the stuff we're doing around AI is really exciting and will only benefit the network from a user point of view. And so we'll bring some of you folks in. Hopefully you'll come and play and enjoy it as well. And we're here to support you guys too. So that's what Discord and the forum really is all about. It's about building this amazing community where we're innovating, and there's plenty of room for all of us, right? So I think we've gone over all four things. We've done the network fundamentals, all the things that we kind of had to adopt after 18 years. I've been hearing about USB sticks and coins on USB sticks at some point. So there is a whole, I don't think that's the best place to put your coins, incidentally. Now, technology has definitely caught up with that one. So, but we are trying to be very respectful of what has gone and what actually still needs to sort of be delivered, and the benefits that every participant in this ecosystem needs to be able to receive, and what that looks like. And I'm confident that we've really got as close as we possibly can. The updates and allocations regarding the white paper, we will do a bit of a download. I'm sure you guys will come back having sort of had time to digest this with questions in the forum and Discord. Rusty will do what he always does, where he's amazing and he'll bring that all in. And so we'll make sure when we do a publication that we've factored that in, or we've at least answered those questions. So you've got all that. And then, from the builders and applications, if you know anybody that you're like, actually, I'd really like them to benefit from the program. It's a pretty good program. Jill and Jim, they sound like some sort of children's TV show, are championing that one. But from a development point of view, we've got like some incredible devs there, and Danny's come over and he's going to be spearheading some of that as well. So we're really excited about, building on this network and bringing all this exciting stuff to life. And I think that's the end. Okay, so I'm going to stop presenting my screen. We can dive in and see if there's any other questions. And Jay, we can tackle some of these, and then we've gone a little bit over already. I can't believe it's 20 to 10 already. Although, no, I think I allowed an hour and a half actually, so we haven't gone over just yet. More friends. Rusty, love friends. Okay. I'm scrolling up, guys. This must be a really painful experience for you. I'm sorry. Right. So 21, 23, Yorick, okay, so I'm back up to speed. How long will the shareholders have their token lots and how many will be available on launch? The Andrew will confirm this. Andrew's actually not Andrew, but Andrew's wife just had a baby yesterday, a little boy. So that's very exciting. So he'll be back. He's doing something quite, I'm not avoiding your question at all. We had a schedule where you could, I mean, the presumption is you might not want to, but you've got availability of token and that drips out every, I think, 2 to 3 months. There's more token that becomes available to you that you can, if you want to, you can sell, or you can obviously just hold on to. But Andrew was looking at the tax implications for shareholders specifically, and at what, and this is why you need accountants, right? But what the implications were if you exercised or if we force you to exercise those or something. So there's now going to be windows where you basically have an ability, there's a window where you can sell up to a certain amount, and those windows open and close. And it means that you've only got a tax liability for something you've actually realized rather than like a paper gain. So as soon as he's back, I think Job is looking at that as well. We'll do a decent write up of that, but it's over an extended period. But the first time you can start selling, I believe, is 8 weeks after TGE, which is good because it gives you time for the price to stabilize. I need to protect the shareholders as best as I can, which means the network needs to get off its hands and knees. Mr. Autonomous Anonymous attendee. Is there a marketing plan in place? What does that look like? Yep, there is a big marketing launch. Well, big marketing launch. There's we've got an agency involved post January. A lot of projects do this weird thing. They kind of do one or the other, but they don't really do both, which I always find a bit strange. They kind of build up to TGE and then like die, or they do not very much to TGE and then kind of try and do something afterwards to kind of make it good, which also seems like at that point you're kind of like trying to correct something. We've got a gentle roll up to TGE during January when everybody's back. The altcoin daily boys. So we're going, I mentioned them because we're going a bit more crypto, talking about what we're doing, the longevity of the project. Lots of press. You guys might know I'm quite friendly with Michael Casey, who was the Chief Content Officer at CoinDesk. I spent some time with him at the ETH Enterprise Conference in Bangkok a few weeks ago. So he's sort of introducing us. So I think industry press is quite important. And then David, you guys will be well aware when MaySafe was first sort of out, was talking to a lot of press publications. So we're going back to those guys. There's almost 3 very different markets here, and we're determined to be like the adult in the room, but we have to, you've got the crypto crowd, you've got the technology crowd, and then you've got like the enterprise crowd, and they're all slightly different. So yes, that's factored, and that's what Jill's here to sort of break down and do. How will the token price and launch TGE be determined? There's different factors into that. We've got a strike price or a list price. I think it's an interesting one with this network particularly because there's so many tokens out there with eMade and OmniMade already, but we have to do what's right for the network right now. That's why you'll look, like the max supply has been reduced dramatically, and talking to exchanges and stuff. So we'll, you'll see that when it lands on a centralized exchange. There's not really a secret because we've been talking about it so much anyway, because ANT stands for Autonomy Network Token. But obviously, if you've been around and you understand Sigmergy, ANT is quite a close name. And if you happen to know what the icon really means, there was an ANT token on all the major exchanges, but it's been in a process of being delisted for about 6 months. So we are, the deal is you can never you can't park a name. You can't have a name. You have to list or not. And if a ticker already is taken, that's it. On a centralized exchange, a DEX doesn't matter, but on a centralized exchange, you can obviously only have one ticker per project. It can't be similar to somebody else's or the same as someone else's. We're hoping that ANT will be available to us. We have other options. Autonomy is a nice long word. So we do have other options for a ticker if we can't get ANT, but there's only one more exchange, I believe, for ANT to fall off of. And then it would be really nice if we could have ANT. Look great to me. Supply reduced to 1.5, very significant and welcomed. Super stuff, David. When you're if you're questioning emissions, if you could do me a kindness and write those down in the forum, because then it's stuff that, you know, Jay and it's probably Jay to be fair, but Jay can tackle. And then because we can help everybody if you ask the questions, because we can then answer that, or even put it in the white paper. We'll share the white paper. It'll be this week. I wanted to have this with you guys to get the kind of the initial reaction. It's obviously a small group. Then it needs to go past the committee. I think we would like some stuff in there on potentially some of the incentives, you know, staking, etc., but we might not. So that's just another debate we need to have. The most important thing was just ensuring that technology-wise, we were able to deliver against what we wanted to achieve white paper-wise, and that's what's taken time, just to make sure it's as because you can do it all if you're going to be centralized, but as soon as you want to go into a decentralized format, it becomes a bit more tricky. But I think we've worked through that. No, it's not exant, it's just ant, so without an X. But yeah, you're right. We could have an X in front of it. I don't know that there is a token with that. I haven't checked. Viewer, whoever you are. Will there be any constraints to also own the tokens and in beta? No, if you've been in beta and you're getting one-to-one tokens, that acts like if you own eMade or OmniMade, you can exchange it or you'll get airdropped it one-to-one. So those are just, you're a token holder and that's just immediately available. We don't, you know, if you're a token holder, you're not attached to MadeSafe, so we're not trying to, I don't mean this meanly, but we don't have to look after you in the same way. You can kind of do what you want with your tokens. And you already own eMade or OmniMade, and you've earned them through beta. So that's slightly different. Ooh, I've tired myself out now. My dulcet tones, you must all be so bored by now. Right, I think I've got all the questions. Jay, is there anything you would like to add, shout about, comment on, or should we wrap it up from here?
No, I think that was everything. I can see that there are some questions around the payment flow and exact implementations around how nodes earn and how uploaders pay. So we have been making quite significant changes in that flow as well, because we identified some of the issues from the previous testnets. So many of those concerns have already been addressed. So stay tuned for the next testnet updates.
Yeah, and our next testnet goes live December 17th, right? That's when we're aiming to push that one out. And that's with what we really needed was we need all of the new payment structures, quoting, etc., in, because we want to have a decent amount of time to test it for ourselves, for you guys, and for exchanges to be able to point at it and say, yeah, it's working, it's doing as we expected. And so, you know, it was really important to us to get that into the December release. It will be quiet, obviously, over the Christmas period, but we'll have a week before that, and then we've obviously got January. Will there be another Nodes Reward program between this one and TGE? We've got the leaderboards running now, haven't we? And then there was more token allocated than is available on those leaderboards. So yes, there is something, but it might take a little bit of a different format than what you guys are used to. I think from our point of view, we want the new emissions and tokenomics in place, and then we can start, hauling new people into the ecosystem as well. But again, it's just making sure that when people land, it's the same thing as with beta, right? Like once we can see a problem's happening again and again and again, it gets a little bit silly just throwing new people at the same problem because it's only doing you damage. And luckily, we've got an amazing community of OGs that are kind of putting their hands up and saying this is wrong. So once we are comfortable that the emissions and the token stuff is working as it should, the marketing can then really kick off, and then we're on the sort of the ramp up into TGE and well beyond it. Yorick, you get the last question. Does the network go offline between the 10th and 17th? Because we're now there. Yeah, so what we didn't want is any confusion between the two things happening, because it takes a while to get everybody off and then everybody onto a new network and all that kind of stuff. So it will still be there, but we'll probably start scaling down the uploaders to give the 17th the best chance. We're actually doing a thing that we've not done, which is really bad, but we're doing a code freeze. So we're into actual, the stand-ups every day. The guys are getting into, we have a live product now. This is a new set of rules, which I think they're enjoying. They seem to be enjoying it. At least that's what they tell me. So yeah, but Jim, when he's back, will fill in the blanks between that. But essentially, there will be a pause for breath moment. But there will be some marketing hitting around that 17th, because we do need to promote that, this is here and this is how the emissions are working. Okay, 51 of you stayed with us. Really appreciate it, guys. Thank you. Enjoy your evenings. Thank you for joining us. We'll do a write-up tomorrow. Any questions we didn't answer that I've missed, we'll grab from here. Anything that you think of after you hang up, feel free, drop it in Discord, drop it in the forum, send a DM to Rusty. He loves it. And then we'll pull it all together, and then, hopefully get the final version out this week that everybody's happy with. But I hope that you see that we're trying to look out for you, and we are doing the best for the network, because those two things are inextricably linked, of course. Oh, and if you know any builders that are ready to go, then let us know about that as well. Again, that's Rusty. Rusty, you're going to get loads of messages. I've just made you really like the man to talk to. That's fine. Jay, thank you very much and good night. Your input's much appreciated. Thank you for walking through all of that. You feel famous. Good. And we'll see you all in the Discord and speak to you all soon. Enjoy your evenings, days, etc. Bye, everyone.